This case takes place in the United States of America on the 15th of July 2013. Jessie Blodgett was born on the 22nd of March 1991 in Cobb County, Georgia, though her family later moved to Hartford, Wisconsin, where she spent her formative years growing up. From a very young age, Jessie displayed a deep love for music and the performing arts. Her parents recognized her talents early on and wholeheartedly supported her creative pursuits. She immersed herself in music, learning to play various instruments and developing a remarkable singing voice. Throughout her childhood, Jessie's dedication to her passions remained. She continued to hone her musical talents and eagerly participated in school performances and local events. As she entered her teenage years, Jessie's artistic pursuits flourished even further, and she engaged in community theatre. She eventually graduated from Hartford Union High School in 2012 and accepted a Distinguished Talent Scholarship from the School of Music Education of the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee. Outside of school, she took up a job mentoring disadvantaged students, and she volunteered to give students voice, piano, and violin lessons. When Jessie finished her freshman year in college, she came back to Hartford to live with her parents for the summer. On the 15th of July 2013, Jessie's mother, Joy, stepped into her daughter's room. She peeked into Jessie's room just before she left for work that morning and found her peacefully sleeping. Jessie had attended a party the night before and was likely just tired. But later on in the day, Joy stopped home for lunch. She shouted for Jessie, but there was no reply. Confused and a little frustrated, she entered Jessie's bedroom, and upon entering, she was met with a sight that no mother should have to see. She found Jessie unresponsive in her bed. She wasn't breathing, was blue, and cold to the touch. Jessie's mother quickly called the emergency services and frantically told them the situation and how she had found her daughter in such a condition. But Joy said something to the operator that showed that this wasn't a natural or accidental death, but rather something far more sinister. She said to the operator, "Her pants are all wet, and she's got what looks like strangulation marks." Jessie's father, Buck, would also come home to the horrific scene. Law enforcement and medical responders swiftly arrived at the residence following an alert from the dispatcher. Joy had attempted to perform CPR on Jessie, but tragically it was too late. When the paramedics arrived, they confirmed that Jessie was dead. Detective Richard Thickens of Hartford Police was confronted with the tragic scene as he entered the home, discovering the lifeless body of 19-year-old Jessie lying on the floor. Her neck bore strangulation marks, and there were faint marks on her wrists, hinting at possible restraint. The grim evidence left no room for doubt. This was now a crime scene under investigation. Jessie's hair and clothes were damp. This unsettling detail painted a sinister picture, as it suggested that the perpetrator had staged Jessie's body, likely washing her up and placing her back in the bed, in what seemed like an attempt to erase any DNA evidence. It also became clear that the killer possessed an intimate familiarity with the house, as no signs of forced entry were found. The focus turned to the party that Jessie had attended the night before. One attendee, an older man, came under scrutiny due to his behavior at the party. A journal entry penned by Jessie herself hinted at an uncomfortable encounter with him. The man who had crossed boundaries by pulling her onto his lap in a non-consensual way. Investigators then found that this man had skipped work on the day of the murder, but despite this, he was eventually cleared as a suspect. Unbeknownst to the investigators working on the case of Jessie, a parallel investigation was underway in a neighbouring town. A woman by the name of Melissa had been attacked just days before Jessie's murder. Melissa was walking her dog at a local park when she was attacked by a man with a knife. After a brief struggle with the unidentified man, Melissa managed to take the knife from him before he ran. Thankfully, she was able to remember every detail of her traumatic encounter. Her vivid description of the attacker and his van led to a crucial lead. When Melissa began describing the van, An officer recalled seeing that very same van parked suspiciously at that very same location where the attack had occurred some weeks before. The officer had run the license plates through the system and was able to look back on the system to find the license plate number, which led them to find the owner of the vehicle. The owner of the vehicle did not match the description of the attacker, but they found that their 20-year-old son did. His name was Daniel Bartelt. Officers went to the home that the car was registered to and spoke with them. They asked if they could speak with their son Daniel, but the parents informed the detectives that he was attending the vigil of one of his friends who had recently been murdered, Jessie. Detectives then asked for Daniel's phone number, and his parents obliged. They left the home and made a call to Daniel. Daniel answered the phone. Detectives asked if they could speak with him at the station, and Daniel agreed to meet them. Daniel, who was still at the vigil, said bye to Jessie's parents and made his way over to the station. When detectives sat down to talk to Daniel about Melissa's attack, they asked him what he had been up to. Daniel replied and said that he had been at Jessie's house for a vigil. The detectives then asked Daniel what had happened to Jessie. His response was both shocking and incriminating. Daniel said that Jessie had been essayed and murdered. This was incredibly significant because at the time, not even the police knew that Jessie had been essayed. During the interview, detectives noticed injuries on Daniel's elbow and hand. Daniel claimed that he hurt himself at work, but detectives knew that he no longer had a job, which prompted Daniel to change his story. He then told them that he hurt himself while cooking. Realizing that Daniel was obviously lying, detectives began to ramp up the pressure. It didn't take long for Daniel to crack and admit his involvement in Melissa's attack. When asked why he had done such a thing, he replied, "I just wanted to scare someone." Melissa was then asked to pick Daniel out in a lineup. She instantly recognized Daniel and pointed right at him. Daniel was then charged with the attack on Melissa. Officers then began to question whether or not he could be responsible for the murder of Jessie too. Daniel's computer was searched. There was a search on spree killers, serial killers, and snuff films. Daniel had downloaded a number of snuff films, one of which matched the events that unfolded in Jessie's room. In the snuff film, after strangling the woman, she is washed and placed back into her bed, just like Jessie was. The pieces of the puzzle aligned, revealing a disturbing portrait of a young man consumed with dark fantasies. Daniel was now a suspect in the murder of Jessie. During the police interrogation, Daniel pretended to cry and claimed that he had nothing to do with Jessie's murder. They then discovered that Daniel was writing a story in which a girl named Jessica is murdered. When asked about his whereabouts, Daniel claimed that he was at a park on the day of the murder. Investigators then looked at the CCTV, and sure enough, Daniel was there. Jessie's family spoke with the investigators and told them that they didn't believe that Daniel was responsible. They couldn't believe that he would be bold enough to kill their daughter and attend her vigil and cry and share memories of Jessie with the family and friends. But they were wrong. The police went to this park and the trash cans were searched. Investigators discovered a box filled with ropes that had been used in the crime, bloody sanitizing wipes, and tape. Forensics found Jessie's and Daniel's DNA on the rope. They also found the exact tape under Jessie's bed. More evidence then came to light. During the struggle, Jessie did attempt to fight back, and she scratched her attacker. Daniel's DNA was found under Jessie's fingernails, as she had scratched him during the fight. Jessie and Daniel did have a history. They briefly dated in high school and were close friends. Daniel too had a passion for music and acting. The two had spent time together before the murder had occurred. It then came to light that weeks before the murder had taken place, Daniel had tried to force a kiss upon Jessie, and she had rejected his advances. It seemed from the evidence that Daniel had made his way over to Jessie's house knowing she would be home alone. He gained entry and attacked her. He then hogtied, gagged, and essayed her before strangling her to death. Daniel then washed his DNA off her body, hence why she was wet, and put her back into her bed. Daniel was charged with the murder of Jessie, and the trial would soon begin.
It looks like strangulation marks.
There are strangulation marks?
That's what it looks like. I don't know what's going on. I don't know what's going on.
Joy Blodgett wipes tears from her face while listening to the 911 call she made after finding her daughter unresponsive in her bedroom on July 15, 2013.
I lifted her body down to the floor and I put a pillow under her head and then I just started doing compression.
Daniel's defense tried to claim that all of the evidence that had been put forward was merely circumstantial and did not prove anything. Daniel too tried to proclaim his innocence, but had no evidence or proof to suggest that he was not responsible for the crime. Despite this rather impressive defense, it wouldn't take long for the court to find the truth. Daniel was found guilty of the murder of Jessie, and was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole.
It's life in prison with no parole for the Richfield man convicted of killing a former classmate. A judge sentenced Daniel Bartelt late this afternoon for the murder of 19-year-old Jessie Blodgett. Blodgett was discovered strangled in her bedroom in Hartford. WISN 12 News' Nick Bohr was inside the West Bend courtroom when the sentence was handed down.
Daniel Bartelt was the reason everyone was here in court, but the young woman he killed, 19-year-old Jessie Blodgett of Hartford, was the person on everyone's mind.
You charmed us, you challenged us, you dazzled us and inspired us. So confident and free to be yourself. So encouraging of others to do the same.
Even as Bartelt was sentenced to life without the chance for parole, he claimed he's innocent. Blodgett's family said bluntly they don't believe him.
I have a disgustingly innate ability to lie to myself that I've exercised far too many times in my life. But I refuse to hurt someone other than myself by doing that.
When Dan murdered Jessie, he killed not just who she was, but who she would become. She will never have the chance to be that woman. And I will never have the chance to know and love and admire and take pride in that woman.
Bartelt still faces 3 other charges, accused of attacking a woman in a park a few days before killing Blodgett.
As he was sentenced to life in prison, a chilling absence of remorse hung in the air. The family of Jessie found no solace in his words, and the conviction marked the end of a relentless pursuit of justice. Today, Daniel remains imprisoned, serving a sentence without the possibility of parole. It is clear that he is far too dangerous to ever be released. If he were to ever be released, it's likely that he would strike again. This was the start of Daniel's murderous career. It's likely that he would have committed far more murders if he was smart enough to evade justice. So, why did Daniel do this? Well, the authorities could not prove a concrete motive for the crime in court. However, the prosecution firmly believe that Daniel killed his friend because she had been a convenient target, and he carried out the twisted crime for his own sinister enjoyment.